The rhythm was unmistakable, a heartbeat, and together they had started to awaken. The world governments went silent. The press releases stopped. The data was buried. But rumors spread through the scientific community. They said the two halves were no longer drifting independently, they were aligning. Telemetry confirmed it. Object A began a slow, controlled rotation, exactly one revolution every 72 minutes. Object B, still stationed near Jupiter, mirrored that movement flawlessly. Every tilt, every angle, every micro-oscillation, identical, as if synchronized by an intelligence greater than anything we could comprehend. When analysts projected the trajectories forward, the result was horrifying. The rotational axes of both objects would intersect right over Earth's orbit. That was when the panic began. Internal channels of the world's space agencies filled with encrypted messages. Someone used the word field, someone else said resonance, and then structure. And a shared magnetic field was forming, a network of invisible energy stretching between the two halves across millions of kilometers. Instruments detected subtle but consistent distortions in Earth's magnetosphere. Compasses began to drift. GPS satellites lost accuracy. Even birds in migration veered off course. The planet itself was reacting. It was as if a colossal hand, unseen but tangible, was brushing against the edge of our atmosphere. And then, for the first time in history, we realized something unimaginable. The two halves of Triatlas were building something. We didn't know what. A bridge, a machine, a weapon, but it was using us as its anchor. In the control rooms, the tension was suffocating. Every new reading made the impossible more undeniable. The pattern wasn't random. The pulses had mathematical symmetry, frequencies harmonizing like the notes of an instrument tuning itself. It wasn't a phenomenon, it was an orchestra. And Earth was sitting at the center of its resonance. The alignment continued to tighten. The energy between the two halves intensified. Magnetic fluxes rippled through the ionosphere. Electric storms formed spontaneously over the equator. In some places, auroras began to appear far beyond the poles, green light dancing across skies that had never known them. At first, people thought they were beautiful. Then, terrifyingly, the colors began to pulse exactly 11 minutes apart, the same timing as the original signal. News feeds went wild, then went dark. The governments tried to contain it, calling it an atmospheric anomaly. But we knew better. Those lights were synchronization beacons, visible signs of the invisible architecture being woven above us. And through it all, the same question echoed in every laboratory, every observatory, every terrified mind on the planet. What happens when the two halves finally connect? I remember staring at the monitor, watching the readings spike higher than anything we'd ever measured. Every second, the data made less sense. The gravitational harmonics were off the charts. The planet's magnetic field oscillated like a heartbeat echoing the rhythm of Triatlas. And still, the objects moved closer, slow, deliberate, unstoppable. We had no protocol for this, no formula, no precedent. Humanity had never faced the awareness of something so vast, so precise, and so indifferent. Triatlas wasn't just crossing our sky, it was building around us. And as the final pulses began to merge, one thought consumed every mind in the command center. Whatever was being assembled above our heads, it was almost complete. And when it is, the universe itself might look back at us. The data from the last 12 hours was unlike anything ever recorded. Every sensor on Earth, gravitational, magnetic, electromagnetic, was screaming in unison. The Triatlas system was no longer just aligning, it was converging. Object A beyond Mars and Object B near Jupiter were now rotating in perfect synchronization. Their frequencies had locked into a harmonic resonance so precise that even the atomic clocks measuring them began to drift. The axis lines of both halves were projected to meet not somewhere deep in space, but exactly along Earth's orbit. Every calculation pointed to the same conclusion. We were standing at the center of something vast, something deliberate. At first, the disturbances were subtle. The magnetic field trembled, the auroras brightened, and compasses no longer pointed north. But then the planet itself began to respond. Power grids surged with unexplained currents. Satellites realigned themselves without command. Ocean tides shifted out of sync with the moon. Something invisible, massive, and intelligent was interacting with us. NASA tried to mask the data, calling it a geomagnetic anomaly. The media showed sunsets painted in strange lights and told people it was beautiful. But those of us inside the control rooms knew the truth. We were witnessing the construction of a structure larger than our world. The term that kept appearing in encrypted communications was field lattice. Two colossal forces, one beyond Mars, one near Jupiter, were weaving an invisible web through the solar system, and Earth was the knot that tied them together. At 2:17 UTC, the first full image of the phenomenon appeared. Using the interference patterns from multiple satellites, we reconstructed what the naked eye could never see. Thin arcs of electromagnetic flux stretching across space, shimmering like ghostly bridges. The two halves of Triatlas were connected by lines of pure energy, an immense geometric network surrounding the Earth. It wasn't random. It was engineered. Some called it a containment grid, others an observatory. A few whispered the word cage. And then, as if to confirm every fear we'd tried to suppress, Object B moved again. After days of stillness, it began a slow, deliberate drift inward, toward the exact point of intersection. Object A mirrored it from the opposite side. The two halves were converging, and every pulse between them grew stronger, faster, brighter. The synchronized heartbeat that had once echoed every 11 minutes now came every 10, then 9, then 8. They were accelerating toward union. I watched the monitors flash with cascading data. Magnetometers spun out of range. Seismic instruments registered vibrations, not from beneath the ground, but from above the atmosphere. Every machine we had was screaming the same message. The Earth was being rewritten, and in that chaos, something began to broadcast. Not in radio, not in light, in thought. It's difficult to describe what it felt like. A pressure inside the mind, a sense of being watched, understood, weighed. Some of the technicians collapsed, clutching their heads. Others whispered words that weren't their own. I could hear it too. Not a voice, but a presence, immense and patient. It wasn't communicating, it was evaluating. Every memory, every frequency, every code we had ever sent into the cosmos reflected back at us in a torrent of impossible data. Triatlas wasn't just observing us, it was measuring the entire sum of human civilization, and then it spoke, not in any language we knew. The message was mathematical, layered with harmonics that carried patterns resembling DNA sequences, planetary orbits, and prime number chains. It wasn't a threat, it was a verdict. We were being classified. The signal cascaded through every radio band, every hidden frequency, even through the dead channels of our deep space network. It was as if the universe itself had chosen to speak through the machine we had ignored. The words translated roughly to a single concept: containment achieved. The world went silent. For the next 6 minutes, every transmission system on Earth failed. Power grids collapsed. The internet went black. GPS and satellites fell offline. Airplanes lost contact. Cities plunged into darkness. And humanity found itself staring into a sky that pulsed with cold, synchronized light. From the ground, people described it as a ring, an enormous halo circling the planet, glowing faintly in the night. Others saw geometric patterns ripple through the clouds, waves of energy bending the upper atmosphere like liquid glass. We watched helplessly as the two halves of Triatlas reached perfect alignment. Their frequencies merged into one continuous tone, pure, flawless, and deafeningly silent. And then, with one final pulse, the resonance ceased. The monitors froze. The readings flatlined. The sky returned to darkness. Triatlas was gone. For a moment, humanity believed it was over, that whatever had been built had passed us by. But as the hours turned into days, we began to notice the change. The satellites that returned online no longer aligned to our commands. The compasses refused to settle. Every magnetic instrument pointed toward the same invisible source, directly above the equator. When the clouds cleared, we saw it. A shadow, not physical, not solid, an absence of stars in the shape of an immense lattice stretching across the sky. A structure so vast that its edges curved with the horizon. It emitted no light, yet it shimmered faintly when lightning struck or when auroras rippled across it. We had become the heart of something new. Some said it was a network, a cosmic machine designed to measure or communicate across galaxies. Others believed it was a containment field, a quarantine placed around us. Whatever it was alive. Every 11 hours, faint pulses radiated from the lattice, sweeping across the planet like invisible tides. Power surges followed in their wake, radio signals distorted into whispers. And sometimes just before dawn, the static on dead channels formed patterns that looked almost like words. One message repeated more than any other. Observation phase initiated. We had not been destroyed, we had been cataloged. Triatlas had not come to invade. It had come to measure, to limit, to lock us in place. The structure above wasn't a weapon, it was a boundary, a reminder, a wall around our world. The governments call it an electromagnetic phenomenon. The scientists call it a mystery. But in every private conversation, one truth remains unspoken. We have been quarantined. I sometimes wonder if this was mercy. Maybe we had reached too far, too fast, launching machines beyond our wisdom, sending signals into a void we didn't understand. Maybe Triatlas was never an enemy, but a cosmic guardian, ensuring we wouldn't destroy more than ourselves. But then, at night, when I stand under that faint shimmering sky and feel the vibration in my bones, I think of something else. A test can be passed or failed. And maybe, just maybe, this wasn't containment. Maybe it was preparation. Because if Triatlas built this network around us, it means one thing: we are not alone. And whatever waits beyond that invisible wall is watching. The next pulse arrives in 4 hours. Every 11 hours, like clockwork. When it comes, the entire sky will shimmer again, and every instrument will hum in perfect harmony. We've stopped trying to fight it. We've stopped trying to explain it. Now we just wait, silent, suspended, inside the vast architecture of something we cannot comprehend. And I can't help but wonder, when the next signal comes, will it finally speak to us? Or will it simply decide that our observation is complete? Tonight, something impossible has happened. An object born beyond the known edges of our solar system has defied every law we thought we understood. It did not crash, it did not explode, it divided perfectly, symmetrically, as if following an invisible command. One half vanished without a trace. The other began transmitting signals directly toward Earth. Scientists are already calling it the most terrifying discovery in human history. And believe me, by the end of this, you will understand why. Because Triatlas might not be just a comet. It might be something that breathes, something that thinks, something that's been watching us. Stay with me, because what happened next will challenge every rule of physics we've ever known and make you question everything you believe about life in the universe. For more than 40 years, I've studied the laws of the cosmos. I've seen black holes swallow stars, mapped the echoes of dying galaxies, calculated the orbits of the impossible. I thought I had seen everything until 11 hours ago, because what happened with Triatlas didn't just break the rules. It shattered our understanding of reality itself. This object didn't collapse. It didn't tear itself apart. It split with surgical precision. Two identical halves, perfectly symmetrical, floating in absolute silence. No debris field, no fragments, just a clean division so flawless that nature could never produce it on its own. I remember the exact moment the call came. My phone rang at 3:17 a.m., a direct line from one of my colleagues at NASA. His voice trembled. I thought it was a prank. Then I saw the data. And in that instant, I knew something vast had awakened. Within minutes, confirmations poured in from around the world. Chile, Hawaii, the European Space Observatory Network, Australia. Every telescope, every radar, every system reported the same thing. Triatlas had divided. But what truly unsettled us wasn't the split, it was what came after. The fragment labeled Object B simply ceased to exist. It didn't drift behind a planet, didn't vanish in solar glare, it was erased. Gone from every radar, every optical lens, every deep space scanner we possess. And you need to understand what that means. We can track an object the size of a basketball from thousands of kilometers away. We can detect galaxies 13 billion years old. Yet now we had lost something the size of a mountain. Ask yourself, what kind of force, what kind of technology could do that? What can erase a mass that large from existence itself? If that thought chills you, it should. Because the other half didn't disappear. It stayed there, steady, cold, silent, sending rhythmic signals toward Earth. The intervals were exact, the precision absolute. At first we dismissed it as interference, cosmic background noise, maybe a solar reflection, but when the data was cleaned, the pattern emerged. A pulse every 11 minutes, timed to the nanosecond. Nature doesn't do that. Not even the most regular pulsars in the universe keep such perfect time. There are always fluctuations, tiny imperfections, reminders that chaos still rules the cosmos. But this was flawless, artificial, like a heartbeat built by design. In the control room, no one spoke. The monitors glowed dimly. The only sound was the clock on the wall. Some said it was a measurement error. Others thought it was interference. But the pulses continued, identical, unwavering. That was the moment everything changed. This wasn't a comet. It wasn't an asteroid wandering through space. This was something built, something obeying a plan. And if those pulses were deliberate, if that acceleration had been controlled, then Triatlas wasn't just passing through our system. It was announcing itself. Hours passed in silence. I remember staring at the telemetry, feeling a tightness in my chest. It wasn't fear, not yet. It was realization. The awareness that we were no longer just observers of the cosmos. We were being observed. 18 hours before the split, Triatlas began to change. Slowly at first, a flicker of brightness, a subtle distortion in its light curves, but then, undeniably, its shape began to shift. What had been an irregular sphere of rock and ice elongated, smoothed, refined. In less than 2 hours, the object had transformed into a perfect cylinder, symmetrical, polished, precise. No natural material can behave like that. No known force can reshape a mountain-sized body so quickly without tearing it apart. And yet, Triatlas didn't fracture. It reformed. Thermal sensors picked up a faint rise in surface temperature, followed by complete stabilization. No eruptions, no debris, no chaos, just a transition, graceful, mechanical, inevitable. I watched the graphs stretch across the screen, tracing that transformation. The data was irrefutable. This isn't an accident, I whispered. This is a process. It was as if the object were preparing for something, a maneuver, a sequence, a purpose. Then, without warning, the pulse stopped. The perfect heartbeat that had echoed every 11 minutes fell silent. No radio emissions, no radiation, no detectable energy. Triatlas had gone dark. For 12 long hours, the universe held its breath. The object drifted in silence. Its surface gleamed under distant sunlight, smooth and lifeless. But we knew better. That silence wasn't the end. It was the pause before the impossible. And then, 11 hours later, the impossible happened. The sensors spiked. The feeds blinked. Triatlas, motionless, perfect, tranquil, split in two. Not shattered, not exploded, divided, cleanly, along an invisible plane so exact it might have been drawn by an engineer's hand. Two halves, mirror images, sliding apart without friction, without violence, no dust, no debris, no radiation, just precision, pure and terrifying. Every scientist watching felt the same shock, awe mixed with dread. It was like witnessing surgery performed on the fabric of reality itself. We named the halves Object A and Object B. For a few minutes, both moved steadily along their predicted paths. Then something happened that froze every heartbeat in the control room. Object B changed course, not slightly. Not from solar pressure or gravitational interference. It turned a perfect 90-degree turn without slowing, without thrust, without reason. In the laws of motion, inertia is sacred. A body in motion remains in motion unless acted upon by a force. But this object ignored Newton, Einstein, and everything in between. It pivoted sharply, accelerated, and within seconds was gone, vanished from every system, every radar, every telescope. NASA lost its signal. ESA confirmed it. Even military satellites with classified sensors reported the same thing. Target lost. No recovery possible. A mountain-sized object traveling faster than anything ever observed had been erased from the observable universe. No light, no radiation, no gravitational signature, nothing. That doesn't happen by chance. That happens by design. No one dared speak. But the thought was shared in every mind. Object B hadn't vanished. It had hidden itself. And if something out there can hide from every human instrument, bend light, suppress gravity, and erase its own existence, then it's not just gone. It's watching. 4 hours after the split, while the world struggled to understand, the monitors picked up something new. Not from the vanished half, but from the one that remained. Object A. At first, it was just a whisper in the static, a faint tremor in the radio band. But when one of our technicians filtered the noise, the whisper became structure, order, a pattern, not random, not natural, mathematical. The tones rose and fell in perfect intervals, ratios too precise to be coincidence, prime numbers, the same sequence humanity used decades ago on the golden record aboard Voyager, our greeting to the cosmos. Only this time it wasn't us speaking. For 31 minutes the signal continued, steady, deliberate, flawless, a voice without words, a message built on the purity of math. Every observatory on Earth locked onto the same point. Every receiver confirmed the same pattern. But then came the detail that made our blood run cold. The signal wasn't being broadcast outward into the void. It was directed inward toward the coordinates where object B had vanished, as if the visible fragment were calling to the hidden one, or worse, giving it instructions. And in the final pulse, the transmission stopped. Silence again, but space itself wasn't silent. The gravitational sensors began to register a faint ripple, an unmistakable vibration, coming from 2 astronomical units closer to Earth. That meant only one thing. Object B hadn't vanished. It was moving, and it was coming toward us. At first, the data seemed impossible to believe. Object B, the vanished half of Triatlas, was moving again, and its trajectory was unmistakable. It was heading directly toward Earth. At first, we told ourselves it must be a glitch, a phantom signal, but every station confirmed the same coordinates. Its course wasn't random. Its acceleration was precise, deliberate, and guided. Something or someone was piloting it. NASA called it a non-gravitational anomaly. Harvard called it controlled acceleration. The European Space Agency called it silence. Behind encrypted channels, one word repeated again and again, piloted. Then the images came. The James Webb Space Telescope, using adaptive optics and deep vision algorithms, captured a faint reflection from object B as it crossed the outer edge of Jupiter's orbit. It wasn't rough like a rock. It wasn't dusty like ice. It was polished, metallic, flawless. Not a single crater, not a single mark of chaos. The surface was so uniform it reflected starlight like a mirror. It wasn't a comet. It wasn't an asteroid. It was a construct. And then the impossible escalated. Object B slowed down. A body the size of a mountain, moving faster than any natural object ever recorded, decelerated, smoothly, controlled, as if obeying invisible thrusters. The readings were undeniable, velocity dropping by measurable increments until finally it held steady. It stopped, right above Jupiter's orbit, motionless in the void, waiting. For 6 hours it stayed that way. No light, no radiation, no signal. A silence so unnatural it made the universe feel smaller. In the observatories we whispered to each other, waiting for what, waiting for who. Then, at exactly 300 hours UTC, the silence broke. The universe roared. Every radio telescope on Earth, from the Atacama Array in Chile to the Very Large Array in New Mexico, registered a colossal electromagnetic surge. Not random noise, not solar interference, a directed emission. The frequencies were layered, microwave, X-ray, gamma, all woven together into a pattern so intricate that the systems couldn't decode it fast enough. At first, it looked like chaos, but when the data was converted into a spectrogram, order emerged. Lines, symmetry, geometry, blueprints. The waves weren't messages, they were instructions, and their destination was Earth. Within minutes, systems across the planet began to fail. Communication satellites blinked out, weather networks, orbital defenses, navigation arrays, one by one, they went dark. At first we blamed a solar storm, a random coincidence, but the timing was perfect. Each blackout coincided with the moment one of Object B's pulses struck the upper atmosphere. It wasn't interference, it was activation. Something dormant was waking up. NASA sealed its data streams. Observatories were ordered to disconnect. The Deep Space Network was cut off, but not before a few independent astronomers caught one last transmission, one final frame that froze the blood of everyone who saw it. Object A, the remaining half of Triatlas, far beyond Mars, had begun to glow. Not reflect sunlight, glow from within. A soft, deep pulse radiated through its surface, synchronized perfectly with the energetic bursts from its twin near Jupiter. Two halves, one sending, one receiving, mirroring each other in absolute precision.